This is Deborah Johnson for Women at Halftime, and I'm passionate about helping women use their untapped skills, resources, and talents to create their ideal work and lifestyle, making a difference in their second half. Well, what a pleasure today is for me that we get to talk about this subject. Greg is with me today, my husband, and we're talking about this wonderful subject, when a type A marries a type B. So, Greg, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
So, you can probably already tell which types we are by my introduction, my fast and furious introduction. But we are different. We're both very different. And I never stopped to analyze this before we got married. And we have, through the years, discovered that we are different. So, and it's a fun little journey here. So, let's define those first. I'm going to let Greg do some of this definition, especially with this type B, which tends to be a little more reflective. So he's dug a little deeper than I have on this, which is great. So why don't you expound on this a bit,
Well,
Greg?
we were laughing before we got into this because even in the preparation for the podcast, it showed our different personality types. Deb said she wanted to talk about this. I said, sure. So, I immediately go to the computer and try to figure out what are the different personality types, what have people written about, and, and I've gotten contrast and all that stuff. Deb, on the other hand, ripped out like 7 questions she wanted to talk about, scheduled the exact time we were going to do this, and is all fired up just to check this thing off. And it shows, one of the differences between type A and type B is type A's tend to be driven and proactive. It doesn't mean they're not prepared or anything like that, but high on their list of things that describe a good day is checking things off, things to do list. And type B's, like me, a good day is having time to reflect on issues, problems, and come up with innovative ideas of how to tackle those things. Mm-hmm. So, type B's tend to be a little bit more reflective. And so, in order to get into this moment, I needed to think about what was the difference between type A's and type B's and feel like, I had something worth contributing. So that starts us off.
And that's so valuable to me because I've really learned to appreciate it. There are some qualities because we're really different, but I've really learned to appreciate that reflection, that thoughtfulness. And when I'm just, spouting off on, okay, this is going this way, and you stop and say, well, wait, now let's look at some different, areas of this. And this is, not just you going through this. This is kind of a common characteristic. You're able to help me see the big picture, not only because of your personality, but because of your experience, but in your way of communicating. So that thoughtfulness. So,
right. Yep.
That really helps me. And we talked about that as a type B, there's more of an emphasis on this quality of life. And I think as we are at our second half right now, mm-hmm. that is really true of you. You're wanting to live every moment to the fullest. And I really see in that almost every day and how special that is. And it's a wonderful attitude. I'm a little more driven. So I'm still wanting to work another 15, 20 years. I've got the quality of movement. I'm producing new material.
Yeah, and when we talk about that, type B's, like quality of life, the opposite of that is not non-quality of life. Right. The opposite of that is quantity of fulfillment. Type A's are typically interested in projects and moving things ahead more than just taking in your environment. A good example is that, we've got a great house, and it's easy for me just to enjoy it, while Deb has probably got 7 more projects that she'd like developed on the house. And all of them are great ideas, and all of them would make our house more enjoyable. It'd build equity into the home. Absolutely nothing wrong with them. But the difference is that she finds fulfillment in moving this thing ahead, where, I'm more just focused on how awesome it is the way it is. And so both of those are good, but they make us different.
Yes, very different. And I think we've learned, to be patient with that. I have, because it's just this thoughtfulness, or just sitting down and really learning how to communicate through that. I think that's been a big thing for me, because then I'm just, at times I would feel like, well, maybe you're just procrastinating, or you're just not getting to it. And you're just, and that's, we feel like those sort of things. So.
Right. And I think one of the things that's kind of helped us work is that we talk through ideas, and either come to realize that this is something we could do, or this is something we can't do, and if we can't do it, when can we do it? Mm-hmm. A good first example is when we first got married. We were living in a 2-bedroom apartment, barely could squeeze Deb's piano into it, and we lived there a couple of years, and we started thinking about having kids. And Deb immediately started thinking, well, we're going to need a house so that the first kid could have a bedroom. And, me being a type B, I was like, well, this apartment seems fine. And, it was her initiative that kind of moved us into the first house, and I had to talk her through what we could afford, what we couldn't afford, what the growth of income would look like, all that kind of stuff. So we had good conversations, but it was type A's tend to anticipate things coming and move towards them. And it's not that I don't anticipate. I do, but I probably anticipate farther out than she does, so I have time to really chew and reflect. By the time I bring something up, I've probably, thought about it 1,000 times. So, whereas Deb may have thought about it 3 times, and and she's thrown out this proposal, and then she has to wait for me to reflect on it.
That's very true. And we didn't really realize that when we got married at all, except for I knew that you were more of an extrovert because of that time you wanted to go and sit in the bowling alley because there was noise around.
Right.
Okay, so, and that's not me. I like quiet. We were sitting by the fireplace. That's perfect for me. So, I knew we had
but part of the reason you like quiet is because you're introvert. Part of the reason you like quiet is so you can focus and produce.
Yes, that's very true.
Whereas white noise is perfectly conducive to reflection. It's also conducive to just private conversations. Yeah, you can talk about just about anything in a really loud environment because nobody else can hear what you're talking about. Very,
very good point. Very good point. So, just those differences come out usually a little bit later. And, we've we've had a lot happen. In fact, when this is airing, we will have just celebrated an anniversary, February 29th, leap year, by the way. But it's been a number of years now. We've gone through this together and realized and grown and learned. And we talked about communication. I still remember us reading that book, Communication is the Key to Your Marriage, when we were first, getting our counseling and getting married. But I had no idea of the different personality types of just, how we work together. Right. Yeah. So that was an eye-opener for me. So
one of the things that's interesting about being different personality types is that type A's tend to be highly competitive, and type Bs tend to be less competitive. And it sounds interesting that the wife would be more competitive than the husband. But what's fascinating about that is that I used to be a professional baseball player. And when you put me between the lines, my competitive nature goes up to places that most people can't get to. But once I walked off the field, I didn't have a need to compete with my other teammates. I didn't have to be funnier, smarter, any of that stuff. And type A's tend to find some of their self-esteem from competing, which is why their businesses tend to thrive, is because, as soon as they wake up and hit the office, they're competing with the entire marketplace. And whereas, I never felt a real need to compete with the marketplace. I had a financial service business, and I would set out how much money do I need to make this year, and for me, there wasn't a sense of I needed unlimited amounts of money. It was what do I need, not how much could I make. And whereas the type A's that I worked with in the financial services business, they wanted as many deals as possible, and would work a bazillion hours, sacrifice their families, and they ended up with a lot more money than I did. But it's just two ways of attacking the same thing. My self assurance and self-confidence came from making enough to provide for my family and developing a quality of life. Whereas that's secondary to a type A. A type A views business as a competitive arena, and they want to win by as much as possible. And neither of them are wrong.
Right.
So if you engage Deb, you become part of her project, and her view of success is making you successful. So it makes her a great coach because your success ends up being her success.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? And even raising kids. I mean, going back to how we raised our kids, it's I never ever thought about this, and I get a little intense, and you're nodding your head. Yeah, you get a little intense, get a little fired up. Depends how much coffee I have as well.
That's true.
But especially raising sons, and they are all, I haven't analyzed if they're I think our middle son especially is the type A, very similar to me, very driven, especially as he's developing a property right now. He is right on it. He's calling those contractors every day. He's making sure they're showing up. He's going and checking on them, and they know they're going to get checked up on, so all of those things. So he is on it. And but the others, there may be in between. I haven't totally analyzed them. They would hate it if they saw it, figured out that I was trying to analyze them. But in raising them, even as we look back, because we have adult children now, and how do you think this has affected our raising kids? I mean, we really haven't talked through this a whole lot, but it's really an interesting concept that we've been together this many years, and we've weathered many years of raising those kids.
Well, now, this is interesting because successful couples always develop a rhythm. And stuff that's been written on being a widow, one of the things that's difficult about it is that, over a 10, 20, 30-year period of time, your rhythm, you allow your other spouse to do certain things, and your spouse expects you to do certain things. And those things, they almost become unconscious. And when one dies, suddenly you really realize that half of you isn't here anymore. and things that were getting done or taken care of or thought of just unconsciously are not getting done or thought of with your spouse gone. And I think the same thing happens with raising kids is you quickly figure out, who does what. And one, for instance, is in our marriage, Deb was kind of the project manager. So she kept, let's say the boys were 7, 5, and 3. She kept those busybodies moving from one thing to the next thing, making sure that lunch was ready or dinner was ready, that they were getting their baths at the right time, that the clothes were getting washed, all those kinds of things. I was the one that would come back, lay on the floor, and let them wrestle with me.
Yes,
they would jump all over me, and I knew that my role was to connect with them and also keep them on the floor long enough so that Deb could have a break.
Yes.
So, so for a 2-hour period of time, I might wrestle with them. We might race trucks. We might go outside and play baseball together. But as you listen to that, you can see my type B personality coming in. I wasn't trying to get anything done. I was just trying to be with them. But realize that stuff had to get done with the kids. Their homework had to get done. They had to be fed. Their clothes had to be washed. Their hair needed to be washed. There was always projects. And that we didn't view that as a mother's role as much as a project manager role.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how that worked out in our lives, because it was because of personality types.
And I think expectations come in that, because we've had quite a few conversations about expectations, because this is where the danger comes in, especially for a type A, I think. Because as I am viewing Greg wrestling on the floor with the boys and doing something, it's like, why aren't you helping me get the plates on the table? Why aren't you helping me clean up this mess? Or why aren't you helping me do this? Because I've been stressed all day. Instead of seeing that he's doing one of the best things he can do right now is just being with those kids, because they need their dad, and they need, and what a gift it is. Many kids do not have a dad, and very fortunate. And to at least give me a little bit of that emotional break, and I look at some women do not have an emotional break.
Right.
They're just, they're locked into that. So expectations, working through those and not putting undue expectations on Greg, and understanding really what he's doing. I think if I had understood this a little bit more, a little bit younger, I might have even been a little more patient. But I didn't really understand it. There's so many studies now on personalities types and your different codes and all sorts of things. But really understanding this basic is a huge one in how we approach life. That's
right.
Easy, A or B.
Yeah, and that led to another kind of conflict. Is that type Bs? They get accused of procrastinating, but we're not procrastinating as much as we're not really affected by time constraints. Because we're kind of in the moment. So
yes.
if the boys and I are having a great time, playing baseball in the backyard, in my mind, it could be that the only thing that would limit our time is it gets dark. Whereas type A's tend to have their life scheduled. And if they're running the family, they also have the family's life scheduled. And you can imagine if somebody is feeling pressure because of time constraints, that we needed to get to the next thing or and the other one is not necessarily affected by time constraints, there can be a clash with regards to, being ready, anticipating stuff. And so that was probably, something as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of raising a family.
Right, right. And I think just understanding some of those differences and that there are conflicts and you can still get through all those. Still, kids turned out great. You know?
But it's important to think type A's, because they're proactive and a little bit driven. In order to live that way, you've got to have time constraints.
Right. Right.
I mean, you've got to schedule something out, work backwards, and go, okay, in order for this to get done in this period of time, I got to get this done, then this done, then this done, then this done.
Right.
And in order to feel successful and affirmed, that's how a type A lives their life. Well, you can imagine that if somebody goes, well, getting this done by this time is a great idea. We'll see if it happens.
Yeah.
That's how a type B, thinks about a project. And they're not going to have their quality of life messed up because, the project doesn't get done in 7 days. It gets done in 15 days.
Right.
So that's just something you got to work through. And you can imagine that if it's just husband and wife, that's one thing. When it's a whole family, there's all sorts of opportunities for conflict and to work through stuff. And I know in my my life, one of the places when I get frustrated or irritated is when somebody else's time constraints get imposed on me. And, suddenly, I have to drop, whatever I'm doing or reflecting on or enjoying, and I suddenly got to get something done that I didn't sign up for. It's one thing if we together decided we were going to have a party on Friday, and chairs need to be set up, shopping needs to be done, tables need to be brought in. If I signed up for it and I know there's enough time in my week to do it, no problem. But when suddenly, in order to serve somebody else's, and particularly Deb's, driven time schedule, that my life is getting imposed on, that's where conflict can hit.
Yeah, so I'd like to kind of sum up some of this in how we have learned to respond to each other. And because I think we've really, especially you have in this this episode, gone a little bit deeper on what a type A and a type B is. And they're both great. But how to respond to each other. And I'll kind of start with this, and we'll go back and forth a little bit. But in responding, as I've understood your personality type, I have to really gauge my expectations and understand what you had just said, your timetable, is to say, give you enough lead time. Say, will this work? Or to make sure you have, you're able to say, no, can we do it another time? Or, that's not going to work. So it'll give you time to, even on this episode that we're doing today, I gave you a little bit, but I had also mentioned it several different times before this. So, but we didn't really, okay, so now I put a deadline on it. So that's me. But you knew even yesterday this was one of my deadlines. And even this week, this is what we are starting to do these, the next batch recording. So this was coming. So at least to give a little leeway on this and not to, there's certain times I do spring things on, but we try to plan. I try to be enough ahead and not be in a hurry. If I'm in a hurry, it frustrates you. So, and you get frustrated thinking I'm frustrated. So then you're double frustrated.
And the only way we know that it frustrates me is because it's frustrated me in the past.
Yes.
Yeah, you learn from experience. And unfortunately, all marriages, you just got to go through that, but you got to figure out how to handle it different next time.
Yes. Yeah, that's very, very true. And the ones that don't learn they have problems.
Yeah. I think another aspect is, every marriage that I know that's highly relational is built on thankfulness.
Yes.
You continue to grate that the other person just doesn't see the world the way you do, or you can become thankful for them. And so, when I start hearing Deb, try to include me into projects, I choose to be thankful. I step back and I look at her as somebody that's competitive, driven, trying to get projects done, and I choose to admire that. And part of the reason I think I can do that is because she has given me the freedom to be me, and not force me to be her.
Yes. Yeah. I really think that's true, because I feel I'll let you cough. I don't do a lot of editing on this. Doesn't matter. But it frees me up, because I don't want to feel guilty wanting to work. And you don't make me feel guilty saying, we want to get out of town.
Oh, no, I appreciate your work. I pray that you would accomplish all your goals, that God would expand your influence and the number of people that you're able to coach and move along. So I not only accept it, I pray for it. So.
Yes, and I really feel that, because my expectation on you, you've handled so much in the past years of, both of our parents being gone. You handled all the finances. You still handle our finances, all of the legal. There's been a lot of things to handle. You handled all of that. And in fact, you've even started handling some of my finances and everything else. So it's been super helpful for me. It's your sweet spot, an area you can really help. And, to be willing to come in a little bit in my business. You don't want to be running any of my business. I want to be able to include your wisdom in what I'm doing. And so you being willing to do that and adding even the input that you did today is extremely valuable to me. And I feel very, very affirmed. And that's the beautiful part about it. And I'm very thankful for that. That was such a great point of affirming each other and appreciating the differences, because that's made a difference. We are celebrating. Now, okay, so do the math for me.
No. Just say we're celebrating a lot of years.
A lot of years. Okay, so we're not going to do the math. Okay, so being leap year, but a lot of years and
of marriage.
Of marriage,
and our anniversary's on leap year.
Yes, so that's why the math thing it really comes in here. So February 29th. There we go. So. Anyway, this has been really a great episode here. And to kind of review a couple things is just to really understand what the different A and B is. It's very simple. Understand the simplicity of it. Not everybody fits in, totally into that A, totally into the B. But you're going to have those tendencies. And understand that, when you first get married, or you first are, even friendships or boards, all of this can come into play here with different personality types and understanding how different people work and move. And that understanding and being able to work with each other with the qualities, what they have, but really be able to be willing to understand what those are, and do the extras. There's all sorts of other personality types and all of that, but it affects every area of life. And I loved that we really ended today on that thankfulness and appreciation, because that's really made a difference for us too. It's made a difference for me of just, okay, slow down, take a breath, and being so thankful and starting out the day that way. Just, we spend time with when we can, our morning times together. So anything else to add here, Greg?
Nope, I think that is it. So
yeah, well, thank you so much for, again, being with it. This is it's so much fun to do this together. And appreciate Greg being a part of this for our Type A and Type B. Make sure you subscribe and tell your friends about this. We're having a lot of fun. The Women at Halftime podcast. Deborah Johnson here with you with goalsforyourlife.com, womenathalftime.com. Plenty of music as well. So thanks so much. Thank you for joining us on Women at Halftime. Visit goalsforyourlife.com or womenathalftime.com for many more resources, downloads, and programs, or to get in touch with me. I'd love it if you leave me a review and tell your friends. So until next time, this is Deborah Johnson, signing off.